Greetings and welcome to the Transform Podcast. This is episode 40. It is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022, and I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. I'll just say right off the bat, we're a little late in publishing our first episode this week, and that is due to me being a bit under the weather this week. You might even be able to hear that in my voice somewhat, so definitely apologize for that or any stray coughing that occurs along the way during this episode. But yeah, so just wasn't able to get an episode out earlier this week, but we will obviously have this one up to you today, and there will be another between now and Saturday, and that'll get our two episodes published this week for you. That's episode 40 and 41. Just a plug for last week, episode 39. I think great episode there for you guys to listen to if you are at all kind of on the fence about, how much content to produce or how much you are producing. Kind of went on a fairly lengthy rant there about how really nobody is producing enough content to really fill this sort of vast universe known as the internet, to draw enough attention to themselves to then convert themselves into a brand or to escalate their business into a brand. So I just want to plug episode 39 from last week. If you guys haven't had a chance to listen to that one, I would definitely encourage you to. Today's episode is going to be very micro-focused. Some big news earlier this week dropped from TikTok about expanding video format to 10 minutes. From the current limit that they had on the platform, users will now be able to upload videos that are 10 minutes long. So I wanted to kind of focus on this because, you might say, well, how newsworthy is that really? Number one, as I've said before on this podcast, sometimes you're going to hear episodes that are very grandiose and sweeping, and sometimes you're going to hear very tactical, granular type discussions on a singular approach or method or platform or whatever, and that's kind of what this episode is like today. That's number one. Number two is I think there's something really significant sort of afoot here. I think there's a symbolism to this move to 10-minute videos. I'll cover that probably later in the podcast episode. I want to cover sort of the practical implications, of this decision by TikTok, and that's kind of the third point, is that I do think there are significant practical implications that are conveyed with this change. But to just give you guys a little bit of history. I don't know, I'm not sure how much you guys follow social media history. I think I've once in a while alluded to it on this podcast, some of the interesting changes and shifts that have undergone, throughout the landscape, starting, back in the Friendster and MySpace days, to Facebook, to Twitter, to Instagram, to Snapchat, to TikTok, as you kind of look at the dominant or the emergent platforms and so on and so forth. But what's interesting is a platform that was out there for a little while. I forget exactly when. I'm going to guess here and say it was like the late 2000s, early 2010s, called Vine. And I believe at one point or another there may have been some overlap with Twitter or something. I mean, people were making Vines and posting them to Twitter, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong about that. But there was a platform known as Vine that was also hugely popular at one point in time. And it was all about, and indeed I do believe that Vine was owned by Twitter, the more I think about it and just sort of dwell on it as I talk to you guys. But the point is, nonetheless, Vine was a hugely popular short-form video clip platform. And the problem was, no one who was making Vines, there were some people who got really famous on Vine. I mean, you may even remember some of them if you were tuned into the platform. They couldn't make any money from it. So Vine, without being able to allow its creators to monetize their efforts, they just moved on and went to other platforms, and Vine, withered and died on the vine. So had to get that in there. So there's some history here in terms of platforms that, let's say, emphasized very short form, very burst-like clips, if you will, in terms of length of time. They just didn't survive. They couldn't satisfy their creators, from a monetary perspective, to continue to focus on that platform. So when you think about, well, why would TikTok do this? What's the motivation? It's been known for, very short, very punchy, very meme-filled video clips. Why would it migrate towards a longer format? Well, we'll get into that later too in terms of symbolism, that point that I made earlier. But I think if you just look at the economics of it, you can see roots in what happened to Vine. Okay, so just kind of wanted to point that out to you guys for social media buffs or historians. That's kind of an interesting thread that you can kind of follow there. Okay, now let's gravitate over to the practical implications. So originally, and this is kind of an interesting progression here when you look back on it. So if you look at TikTok, which really was emergent in 2019-20 timeframe, I would argue that some of the bigger names in this arena were gravitating onto TikTok and using it definitely by 2019. But I think the general populace really thrusted TikTok forward in 2020 during the pandemic. So you see kind of a dual action there in terms of how it made it to where it is today. And I'd say by 2021, it was like completely understood that TikTok was the emergent dominant platform. But originally, TikTok limited clips to 15 seconds. I mean, it was extremely short, forced you to be very creative in a short window of time. That 15 seconds eventually became a minute, and then that minute became 3 minutes. And I believe between the 3 minutes and the 10-minute announcement that was made this week, there may have been a stop off at 5 minutes. I'm not 100% sure about that, but the point is, think about it. From 15 seconds, let's go back to 2019. Okay, I'm kind of assuming that that's where that limit was last in place, roughly on the timeline. So 15 seconds in 19, and here we are 3 years later at 10 minutes. That's a massive change in the amount of runway, if you will, that creators are going to have on this platform. So I think that when you look at that, it's very interesting to note. And again, I'm going to come back later to what I think some of the symbolic reasoning is behind that. But here's the deal, guys. Practically speaking, the bottom line is you can do more now on TikTok. You have less excuse, in my opinion, for not using it than you had before. Okay? So I think that when people think about TikTok and they're concerned about its practicality or its usability for their business, there's a lot of concerns there. Full disclosure here. At Transform, we don't have a TikTok presence. We've yet to establish one there. Although we do study it and we do know the trends and the techniques and so forth, and it doesn't stop us from understanding the platform. But for our delivery mechanism strategy, it has not yet been adopted, but it may very well. But the real point is, I think that when businesses look at TikTok, the chief concern I hear is it's not my audience. It's too young of an audience. Well, there's logic there and there's flaws in that logic. We won't pick them all apart right now, but the point is, people kind of assume that they're not going to reach the right people. That's a chief concern. And then I think the next closest one kind of alludes to this length of time issue, is that, hey, I can't get a message across that professionally or successfully explains my business and what I am offering in that amount of time. I'm just not going to, be able to tell people about, what I can do for their taxes or for their financial planning or whatever in a 60-second, music-laden clip. And I think, I understand that to a certain extent. I definitely think there's an outside-the-box thinking that's required there. The shorter the amount of time is, you have to get very creative. You have to use all the tactics available to you to convey the message in that very small window of time. So I get that, and I definitely maybe I even understand that argument better than the first one about the audience. But what's interesting now about TikTok going to 10 minutes is that excuse is going away. And I think, when you think about what messaging you can convey in 10 minutes versus 1 minute or 10 minutes versus 3 minutes, depending on, what kind of clips you were intending to upload to TikTok originally, I think that, the possibilities now are, somewhat endless, right? In 10 minutes, that's kind of, like a standard optimal YouTube video when you think about it, right? when we run YouTube channels for clients, we try to aim them into the 5 to 10 minute time frame, right? So there's successful YouTube videos out there that are teaching people concepts in various disciplines, whether it's finance, whether it's health, whether it's physical fitness or relationships or cooking or anything. I mean, I'm just naming some off the top of my head that are 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes long. And usually we don't look for, in terms of how we advise our clients, we're not going past 10 minutes in most cases. But now you can post videos of that length on TikTok. Okay, I mean, you can make a 7-minute video for YouTube that, at least technically speaking, you have to watch the contextuality of it. But, that 7-minute video you made for your YouTube channel could potentially be brought over to TikTok. Okay. And again, you would contextualize it. You'd probably do some things with, text overlays and music and things of that nature. But the length of time would not be the issue. Okay, the length of time would no longer be the issue. So I think, this is not rocket science, guys. I'm not going to dwell on it a whole lot longer. I want to move on to the last point, and then we'll wrap this podcast up. But I think, what I would encourage you to do with this news is this. Take another step back. If you've already decided, if you're in on TikTok, you probably could ignore this entire episode, unless you didn't know the news about 10 minutes. But if you're on the fence or you'd withdrawn from using this platform, I think at this moment, this is an opportunity to revisit that decision and audit that decision and say, okay, wait a second, let me think about this for a moment. With a 10-minute window of time, what are some of the things that I would feel more comfortable conveying about my business that I feel like the message will come across successfully in that time span? Maybe now I have to focus less on being pithy or creative or, thinking way outside the box. I can maybe just sit down and make a video and have some real runway on explaining what I want to explain or laying out what I want to lay out, for the user. And I don't feel constrained. I don't feel like I'm capped off. I don't feel like I'm not going to be able to get the proper messaging across, or it's going to get garbled because it was forced and because it was shortened by the limits of the platform. So I think just from a practical perspective, guys, I think it's an opportunity for you to revisit that, think about it. If you are making videos elsewhere on YouTube, Facebook, longer form videos, 5+ minutes, think about how those videos might translate over to TikTok and how you might be able to just make a few tweaks, make a few adjustments to it. Even if you outsource, you find somebody who you can freelance the editing of the video to say, hey, look, here's a YouTube video where I'm straight up talking to the camera. Can you make some text overlays, pull out some of the key points, maybe add in some music in between transitions, and now you've got a TikTok video. So I think that possibility, maybe that one alone, okay, if you are already making videos, but you didn't think your video format translated to TikTok, well, now I think you've lost that excuse. And I think you can actually say, well, okay, I can repurpose these things, and I can actually get double duty out of them, okay? Don't underestimate the need to contextualize that video for TikTok. You're probably going to need to change a few things, but it doesn't, it doesn't now preclude you off the bat because of length of time. You've lost that excuse, okay? So I wanted to hammer that home, guys. And I think, I want to wrap up on this, like I said, this sort of symbolic point that I see. I mean, this is my personal opinion. I don't know, I actually haven't heard anybody come out and say this yet, particularly on the heels of this news, although I'm sure this opinion is, it's not the first time that anybody's voiced it, is this notion that symbolically, it's interesting to me, and it's ironic that a platform that separated itself from YouTube, from I'll say chiefly from YouTube, but obviously anywhere else you post longer video formats. I mean, even let's say Instagram with videos going on to IGTV. Which of course got phased out, but the point is the longer videos that were being posted to Instagram, the fact that TikTok made its name and separated itself based on brevity, creativity, pithiness, right? That's how it kind of carved out this dominance, right? And it had all these other platforms following it, saying, oh my God, we got to get back over to short form video. We got to do, 1 minute or less. We've got to compete with TikTok on the short form video angle, right? And not only that, but they were throwing tons of money at it. YouTube paying shorts creators, Instagram paying reels creators to bring them over to their platform and encourage them to make videos natively in that very short burst-like format, right? Well, guess what? Now TikTok is heading the other way. TikTok is heading towards, a 10-minute video is a long YouTube video, right? That's not even, I wouldn't even argue that 10 minutes is some middle ground. A 10-minute video is like, think about it. Think about how many 10-minute videos or roughly, give or take a little bit, that you sit down and watch on YouTube in one shot. Some people will obviously commit to that when you're really trying to learn a concept or whatever. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But, let's face it. That's a commitment compared to, consuming a 1-minute clip on any of these platforms, shorts, reels, TikTok, whatever. So I think it's very interesting that as some of the platforms gravitate the other way, towards being shorter, that now TikTok is gravitating the opposite way, towards being longer. And I think when you add it all up, it's simply a democratization of content creation on these platforms. These platforms are recognizing that the creator, the person making the content, is the most important cog in the wheel. If nobody's creating, nobody's watching. If nobody's making native videos for that platform dries up. And users and viewers leave the platform. And when users and viewers leave the platform, so do advertisers. And advertisers leaving a platform means there's no more ad revenue. And no more ad revenue means there's no more platform. Okay? So it's fascinating to me to watch these platforms jockey for position and accommodate creators at every turn. First accommodating the short form creator, and everybody shifting that way. Now going back and accommodating the longer form creator, and everybody probably shifting back that way. And it's just a constant sort of, amorphous sort of, flowing wherever the water takes it kind of thing, to accommodate the end point in the equation, which is the actual creator uploading material to that platform. So, you say, well, okay, Chris, great point. Who cares? Like what does that affect me? Well, it may not affect you if you're not that focused on, making content for these platforms. But if you are, then you realize that more and more so, you are in the driver's seat. They need you as much as you need them. And there was a point in time in Web 2.0, the whole social media, sort of phase of the web, where it really wasn't that way. These platforms, obviously they wanted accounts and they wanted users to come onto them, but they were calling the shots more so than they are today. They were just sort of laying out policy and rules and you just followed them. And if you didn't follow them, then you weren't going to be on that platform, basically. And, don't get me wrong, there's still policy frameworks to all these platforms. You can get kicked off a platform for a lot of reasons, but there's more heft to users who can make the most of these platforms. There's more gravity coming their way for being successful on these platforms, I think, than ever before. And I think the number one and maybe the only indication you need of that is that YouTube dedicated, I think it was like $28 billion to creators. It had a creator fund, or excuse me, its total ad revenue last year or something to that effect was like $28 billion, and half of that went to creators. Yeah, I actually have a note here in front of me. So last year, in 2021, YouTube brought in $28.8 billion in ad revenue, and half of that went back to creators. So think about that. $14 billion back to YouTube creators. And on the lower end of the spectrum, but still not insignificant, TikTok dedicated $500 million to its creative fund. These are real numbers, guys. This is real attraction to trying to bring in creators and users to a platform. This is like serious business, right? So these platforms know that if nobody's creating and nobody's making and nobody's uploading, there's no platform, right? So this is a very, very big deal. Again, I think I've mentioned it before here on the podcast, maybe a couple episodes ago at most. Take like Netflix, for example. If Netflix doesn't have people making good movies, nobody's subscribing to Netflix. Nobody's watching Netflix, right? So, Netflix exists because of the quality of the content on the platform. And I think, obviously, if I remember correctly, Netflix started off just regurgitating movies that were already out there. I mean, you just would, it's like kind of going to Blockbuster, but you didn't have to leave your living room. But eventually, Netflix got into the business of saying, look, we got to go past just regurgitating movies that have already been made. We have to make our own stuff. We have to keep people having a reason to come onto this platform. So there's all kinds of material now made directly by Netflix, them reinvesting in themselves to bring people to the platform. So bottom line, guys, is the same thing is afoot with the social media platforms like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. And they recognize that you have power and that you not, if you have the capability to make viral, popular content, and you're not making it on their platform, but you are making it on another platform, that's a loss for them. That's a problem for them. And so that's why they've dedicated these war chests to trying to attract creators to natively create content on their platform. So I think the symbolism of TikTok now going the other way, going against the grain, going against the very thing that separated them from everybody else, that is not insignificant. That is not lost on me in particular. I'm sure it's not lost on a lot of people who follow this space. But it is something for you guys to keep in the back of your mind that, whenever you sit there, and I guess this is the punchline, when you think, well, is it worth lending my voice? Should I lend my voice? Does anybody want to hear my voice on these platforms? Does it matter if I upload any content? Do not cut yourself off at the knees like that, okay? You have a message. You have content that's valuable to somebody. Okay, if you are running a business, if you're running particularly a successful business, there's somebody out there who you can reach on these platforms and you can resonate with. And, doing it, even halfway effectively is going to get you some traction here. And if you do it really effectively, trust me, it is going to go far on these platforms, but particularly these formats that they are emphasizing, okay, as they compete with each other. Okay, so this is all good news for you guys, for anybody who's open to this, anybody who's open to TikTok, anybody who's open to creating content for these platforms. This kind of thing, this kind of news, the symbolism behind it is good news for you, because I just believe it means that that the opportunity is as good or better than you even perceive it to be on these platforms, to reach the scale and the opportunity that they provide you to reach a wider audience, grab the attention of a wider audience, expand your user base, expand your client base, and increase your revenues, and hopefully eventually, escalate you into that brand status. Okay, guys, so kind of pounded the table there a little bit longer than I expected, so this episode did go a bit longer than I planned. But anyway, guys, check out the news. I mean, you can Google it. I mean, we'll post it as well on our platforms if you guys want to check out the full article about at least the one that I consulted before I did this podcast. I'm sure there's plenty of information out there about it. But if you guys, excuse me, if you guys are curious about, okay, Chris, I'm game. I do want to go on TikTok. I do want to make the longer videos. I feel more comfortable, whatever. And you guys want to consult with us about it, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Come over to the Facebook page. Come over to the LinkedIn page. You can drop us a note there. You can inquire through our website, transform.com. We would love to do a strategy session with you, do that free consultation on what you guys could do with the platform. And then if you decide to work with us, that would be awesome. We would love that. So in the meantime, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you again for following and supporting the podcast. Please subscribe if you haven't hit the subscribe button. Share the podcast with friends, family, business associates, etc. Give us a like, give us whatever positive feedback you feel compelled to. If you have negative feedback or something that you think we could do better, or you'd like us to do differently, of course, we're open to that as well. Any feedback is great feedback. So anyway, thanks again, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. Like I said, we will be back with episode 41, most likely tomorrow. Outside chance that it'll hit on the front end of the weekend before we go into a new week. Starting on, what will that be? March 6th, the week of March 6th. All right, guys, thank you again so much. We'll wrap up episode 40 here. This is Chris Anastasio signing off. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.